What is up, guys? Frosty 0232 here today for another Frosty Features. Today we have our second member of Alpha Flight blog post order, if you've ever caught on to it. We have Sasquatch. Now, what this is, if you haven't been here before, is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I'm the dude that's gonna take you through it. So, let's begin. So what we do here is, according to Scopely, this is the blog post description of who this character is in the background, and at the end of the feature, we will rate it. So let's get into it. Sasquatch. Dr. Walter Lankowski was a brilliant physicist who transformed into a massive orange-furred beast resembling the legendary Bigfoot after an experiment with gamma radiation went awry. He attempted to unlock the secrets of the Hulk's power, but instead linked himself to mystical forces from the realm of the great beasts, granting him superhuman strength, durability, and the ability to transform into a Sasquatch form at will. Acknowledging he resembled Bigfoot, he called himself Sasquatch and became a founding member of Alpha Flight. That is the description that is presented by Scopely. Like I said, we will rate it at the end. So that is our guy for the sake of this feature. So, Sasquatch. Name, Walter Lankowski. So, for those of you checking this out, we typically stick to Marvel 616 canon in this situation because everything works off of that. So if there's additional lore, it is based off of the 616, whether Scopely likes it or not, or, other content creators. First appearance, X-Men number 120. We talked about this in Frosty Features North Star. All of the Alpha Flight that wasn't already introduced into the Marvel Universe was introduced in X-Men 120. So Sasquatch is one of those people. Powers and abilities. He's superhuman in every sense of the word. Superhuman strength, speed. He has a healing factor. He also is a super genius. More so to the fact that he was already a super genius, so his personality transfers over to Sasquatch for the most part. Aliases, Snowbird and Doc Samson. This is a little confusing. Doc Samson also turns into a Sasquatch kind of thing. The big thing with Sasquatch that you gotta realize is him and the Hulk transform into their monster versions in a similar fashion by, visual sense. But, Sasquatch does more of a soul swap, so he ends up in other people's bodies. So there is a time where he inhabits Snowbird's body, and he inhabits, and this actually, I think currently in the comics, he is inhabiting Doc Samson's body. But him and Doc Samson have a very parallel, kind of storyline, which makes it a little complicated, but ultimately, if it's a green Sasquatch, it's Doc Samson. If it's orange, more often than not, it is Walter Lankowski. Affiliations. He has only been affiliated with all of the levels of flight. So Alpha, Beta, and Gamma are the original 3 flights, and then he's the founding member of Alpha, one of the founding teams of Alpha Flight. He works his way up to Alpha Flight from Gamma and Beta, and then he puts together Omega Flight later after Alpha Flight originally falls apart. So there we go. Background: he's a Vancouverite. He's from British Columbia, Canada. He is they're supposed to be Canadians. He's one of the Canadians that are on Alpha Flight. He also, it's kind of a big deal in context of the comics that he is a Jewish Canadian. So that is something to keep, if you didn't know it from his name, it's something to keep in mind. Who died? Himself, eventually. Actually, this being the 94th Frosty Features that I have done, Sasquatch is one of the only people. So the joke I say here is, you can't be a superhero or supervillain without somebody dying. Well, in Sasquatch's case, nobody actually dies. I could make a very loose argument that he, because of people dying for the Hulk becoming a thing, Sasquatch wouldn't be a thing without the Hulk. So you can say Brian Banner. You could say, anybody hurt by the Hulk. It gets kind of iffy, but ultimately nobody dies for Sasquatch. He does die, and he kind of comes back and after he's resurrected, it's the reason why he can be Sasquatch. But from the origins, actually nobody. So admittedly, I could have put no one. That's a hard argument to lose right there, right? This isn't Greg versus Frosty here. This is if you could be a superhero, supervillain without death around you. In 94 episodes, I think there was one other one. I don't remember who it was, but yeah. So at the end of the day, nobody. It really is no one. He was a professional football player, fun fact. He's a smart cookie, was going to college anyway. He started at University of Calgary, and then he got a football scholarship to go to Penn State. He played football for Penn State, and then ended up joining the Green Bay Packers and played with the Packers for a while. This is all circa the 60s for my football fans out there, timeline-wise. So, I think of like 66 era. Which that doesn't really work with the sliding timeline of the Marvel Universe, but Alpha Flight often goes on the wayside as far as some of that stuff's concerned. So it may be updated soon, but in the actual timeline in which it came out, we've got like 1966, 67-ish. He would have been a Green Bay Packer. So draw your own lore from that. The Beast Door. So the way Gamma monsters work, so Gamma monsters being like Abomination, Hulk, the Leader, these types of people, when they transform into their Gamma selves or are transformed into their Gamma selves, they go through something called the Green Door. So a big thing, and we're going to talk about it more here in a second, but Walter Lankowski turns into the Sasquatch by trying to recreate the Hulk's experiment in a controlled fashion. In doing so, he opens the Green Door. Unknowing to him, he also opens something called the Beast Door, which takes him to the Beast, or not takes him, but it sets him in line with the Beast Kingdom, right? So his powers, so as Hulk is within Bruce Banner and comes out, Walter Lankowski does not have that problem. What's going on with him is actually there's a separate beast entirely, and very similar to when we talked about it in Frosty Features Dark Star. Oh no, sorry, it's not Dark Star, it's Darkhawk. Frosty Features Darkhawk. He actually he swaps places. His body in consciousness swaps places with someone else, right? So it's actually a great beast named Tanrock that he swaps physical places with. So over time, he's possessing the body of Tanrock, and the way that it works, and he doesn't know it at first, is the more he swaps places with Tanrock, the more Tanrock can control him. And that might appear in our notable events coming up. Relationships. Veronica Lankowski is his ex-wife. He has an unnamed son. So something that's really interesting, it is assumed that him and his ex-wife are divorced somewhere around the time he leaves being a professional football player, and his son is only ever mentioned once ever in the comics. Is it going to be brought up? Probably. Like, this is one of those, if they ever actually want to dive into a solid Sasquatch storyline, they could bring up his son. But currently there's one mention of his son ever as of this recording date, and it has never been named, never been brought up again, right? So he's divorced, and then Jean-Marie Bobier is his on and off lover. That is Aurora. A lot of the response to the Alpha Flight team coming to Marvel Strike Force seems to be people complaining about who the lineup is, which it always is. And everybody, a lot of the other content creators like to be like, oh, well, the lore doesn't count. That's not the correct argument to go with, right? There's multiple Alpha Flight lineups, right? When everybody complains about Sunfire being an Alpha Flight, he was an Alpha Flight. It still counts, right? You have to consider all the sources, and they can make their own teams. That does not change the lore, right? So in this situation, when people have been complaining that Aurora, that I've seen a lot on Reddit, people are complaining that Aurora isn't an Alpha Flight. North Star is an Alpha Flight. I'm not sure. They're almost the same character. There is a situation where Sasquatch actually changes Aurora's powers so that she's a little bit more different than her brother. But at the end of the day, it's very much, they're all in Alpha Flight. People are complaining that Puck's not there, right? every team is missing somebody in some form or fashion, right? It's not the original lineup, so people get upset. It is a possible lineup. It is a mix that sort of can make sense. Like, it can pull together in the story. It makes sense. They all have the thing. I'm sorry. I'm on Scopely's side for once. It is what it is. But it doesn't change the lore. I don't know if it's coming down from Scopely or if it's an Envoy thing or what. But it's something that I'm always in chats arguing about, is just whether or not lore counts. Right? It counts, damn it! Ah! Notable events. Here we go. The transformation, the origin story of Walter Lankowski. As I said, he went to University of Calgary, Penn State, became a football player, and then what happened? Right? He's got the money. He's in the NFL, professional football player. He's got money, but he's smart, and he misses his research, but he's making it well as a football player. What happens? Bruce Banner's identity is revealed to the world. So an interesting thing about Walter Lankowski, in his first year at Penn State, he and Bruce Banner actually run into each other and exchange notes. They're light friends at the time. Bruce Banner's identity is released to the world that he is the Incredible Hulk. He is Hulk. And in seeing this, Walter leaves the NFL and goes to the Department H, who we talked fully about in Frosty Features North Star. It is the superhero government association thing in Canada. He goes to Department H. He's like, yo, give me funding. I'm going to recreate the Hulk's experiment, but in a controlled fashion. And, we can make superheroes. And Canada's like, we would love to have more superheroes. Let's see what happens. So they get James Hudson, so Guardian in Marvel Strike Force. My brain automatically calls him Vindicator. He is like, here's money. You get a base, but it's in the Arctic Circle, because if you screw up and become the Hulk, we don't want you killing a bunch of people. Another reason why he doesn't have anybody that dies, because when he does quote unquote Hulk out, it just is it's contained in such a way that there's no one for him to hurt. He even goes as far as to send his assistants away, just in case something goes wrong, so nobody dies. He just wrecks a bunch of buildings and then ends up in the Arctic Circle alone, as one does. So, they get a base in the Arctic Circle, he puts the stuff together, and debatably is pretty successful in his experiment in becoming a Hulk monster. He ends up becoming the Sasquatch, but the thing is at first he can't control it, so he goes on a rampage, he destroys the lab, runs out in the middle of the Arctic Circle like so many people love to do, and he passes out. And one of the other members of Alpha Flight, Snowbird, comes upon him, right? So she takes his unconscious self to the Department H. She takes him to Shaman, and Shaman and Snowbird are like, yo, when Snowbird, she changes into animals as her superpower, and she has some other ones too, but ultimately she changes into animals. She's like, hey, I have to maintain my consciousness when I go to these different animals. This is how you do it. So her and Shaman teach Walter how to keep his consciousness when he goes into Sasquatch form, which is by the time. And with this, he starts in Gamma, works his way up to Beta, works his way up to Alpha, and then becomes part of that first Alpha Flight team we ever see by working up through those things, and with the help of Snowbird and Shaman. That's really the origin. The big problem I have with Sasquatch is that when I said North Star's a side character, he has more development than Sasquatch. Sasquatch is he's in media, he's in a bunch of the shows, he's in a bunch of stories, but he's always the side character. He has very little developed about him overall, other than when we get to it. We're not going to talk about Immortal Hulk in the notable events because we've hit Immortal Hulk in a few different features. But when you get into Immortal Hulk is when you find out a lot more of his stuff. Besides this stuff with the Beast Door, which I have titled Soul Searching. So with the Beast Door, what had happened was when Walter created his experiment, the overflow gamma radiation that happens from his experiment actually unlocks a mystical barrier in northern Canada, which opens up the realm of the great beasts. So Snowbird, being a descendant of some Inuit gods, is tasked with killing all the great beasts that come about, right? So as Walter continuously becomes Sasquatch, he slowly is becoming possessed by Tanrak, the beast in which he's swapping his body out with. Once again, it's the same thing as how Darkhawk works, right? The person swaps it over. In chat, somebody just asked, why isn't Sasquatch green? At first, it's always an excuse. It's always an excuse that is explained in the comics. At first, he thinks it's because of his. At first, he thinks it's because he is close to the Aurora Borealis, which made him keep that orange tint. But what it actually ended up being is when he swaps body, he's swapping with Tanrak. He isn't physically changing into the monster. He is swapping places. His body is swapping places with Tanarak's consciousness. And so Tanrak gets his body in the Kingdom of the Beast. He gets Tanarak's in the world, right? So that's where we're at right now. It's the only reason why I answered chat during the middle of the feature. So with that, he is orange because of this. He's swapping places, and as he turns into it, his strength weakens, and Tanrak is able to possess his body in the real world. The Great Beast's big goal is to take over the world, and so Snowbird is tasked with killing all the great beasts, and it is revealed to her relatives, the Inuit gods, are like, hey, that dude's a great beast. And she's like, what? And then she has these visions. It's like, oh man, I have to kill him. So after fighting a villain called Caliber, Sasquatch is wounded, and all of a sudden Snowbird's like, I'm sorry, dude, I'm gonna have to kill you. And Tanarak ends up taking over, and she turns into a white Sasquatch to fight him back, so she can kind of go blow for blow. And at the end of the day, she's like, I'm a pretty lady, you're a pretty dude, and I'm gonna rip your heart out. Literally. So she, as Sasquatch, white Sasquatch versus orange Sasquatch, she punches into his chest and rips his heart out to kill Tanrak, which she is successful in, but she also kills Walter. So at that point, she knows, because the body and consciousness is swapped between the Kingdom of the Beasts and the real world, that his soul is still stuck in kind of this ether within the Kingdom of Beasts. So they set a mission with Alpha Flight to go and retrieve his soul. This is where it gets a little complicated, as I was talking about before, where he hops between the different bodies. Eventually, Sasquatch version of Snowbird dies, and so Alpha Flight is they're successful in going and getting his body. They bring a robot along, and they're like, okay, Soul, you get to be in this robot. So for a while, Walter is not Sasquatch. He is a robot that has essentially the same powers as Sasquatch, but he operates as a robot for a long time, and it's Walter possessing the robot. But then eventually we find that they are searching for a physical body for Walter to be in, and in doing so, they find a body that is stuck between dimensions that is currently quasi-mindless, and they send Walter's soul towards the body to see if they can retrieve it, and upon getting there, they find that it is the Incredible Hulk. It is Bruce Banner's body, and Walter's like, I can't do this, I'm not going to be able to, and more or less he disappears, finding eventually a mindless body in Shaman's magical sack, where we have the character, that Smart Alec, that is currently a mindless in Shaman's sack. And what happens is, when Snowbird dies in Sasquatch form, Pestilence, that mangy old fella, ends up possessing Snowbird's dead body, and in doing so, Smart Alec, it's Walter, it's Sasquatch, he decides to come out of Shaman's sack in Smart Alec's body, and they fight. So it's Smart Alec versus Snowbird Sasquatch, but it's actually Pestilence versus Walter, and Walter ends up beating him so bad that the spirit leaves the body, and so Walter leaves Smart Alec's body and goes in soul. He soul jumps out and goes into the Snowbird body, since it was still obviously working, and so he becomes the white Sasquatch, and he's like, all right, cool, I'm going to revert to my human form, and when he does so, he becomes this white-haired lady that is a mix between him and Snowbird, that he then goes by Wanda Lankowski, and he's in this body for a couple of months, so there's a few issues where we have the white Sasquatch being Walter Lankowski, but as Wanda Lankowski, because he's a woman now. But eventually, so big thing with Snowbird, because she has the relations to the Inuit gods, she dies and comes back a lot. So there's a point where she comes back and she's like, oh, Wanda, you have a piece of me. I'm going to take it back because that's kind of different. So she takes back that piece, and then in reverting back to his human form, Walter is able to turn back to his regular human form, which is kind of how it moves on from there. And then past that, you pretty much just have him as a side character, a bunch of stuff, no development, and then Immortal Hulk, which is years and years later. Super crazy. But anyway, that is notable events. Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power level, but here on Frosty Features, we do know the way this works. If you are a multiversal threat, you can take down the multiverse as we know it. Not just your reality, but all realities bend to your will. Universal means that you can maybe destroy your universe, hop on over to another one, and take that one out if you so choose. Cosmic means you are a threat on a planetary scale, taking out things like planetary bodies or solar systems or small galaxies. Nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, leveling things like small cities all the way up to a planetary body with enough time and effort. Super Soldier means that you are beyond all capabilities of human ability. Our tried and true Captain America is our baseline character for this. You are superhuman in every way, super speed, reflexes, etc. City means that you are equivalent to a human being trained to the absolute and utter peak ability of the human condition. So here we have a lot of our mercenaries, our ninjas, our secret agents, things like that. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that is spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force and left to his own devices. He's not worth a dang thing. So in the event that I'm stuck in a doctor's office and I'm currently going through the latest Where's Waldo newspapers, and Greg comes in with a big old problem, and he's like, hey, I'm dead, receptionist, and I don't want to wait for my stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then he wipes everything off the counter and he hits me, and I'm there for anger management. And so all of a sudden I got hit with a stapler and I'm pretty mad, and Greg's already mad. So all of a sudden I'm shoving Waldo down his throat, right? So theoretically, in this situation, due to undead Asgardian physiology, just because I say so, we're gonna equate Greg to that of a regular human being. So theoretically, Frosty could take it, right? So in the event of Sasquatch, we actually have a really complicated situation here. His powers are just being superhuman, right? So he has super strength, he has super speed, super reflexes, but he's not faster than anybody. He's not really strong. He's strong, but to what level is he strong? Is he stronger than Captain America? Absolutely. Is he stronger than the Hulk? Absolutely not. So where he ends up being is being stronger than the Thing, even though the Thing is able to beat him in a fight, right? So he can lift like 90 tons, which is significantly more than Captain America, who's around 1,500 pounds-ish, right? So less than a full ton. Granted, we see him pull feats off that are much higher than that, but Sasquatch is higher than that. But he doesn't have the area effect like Hulk can. Hulk can, fall from space, survive, and take out a city, right? And the true fashion of nuclear. So as far as Sasquatch is concerned, the best argument I can make, he would either be the top tier super soldier, which would be the highest level, or the lowest tier of nuclear, due to the fact that there is a point where he fights the Thing, as the Thing also fights Hulk. He fights Hulk. He does not last very long at all. In fact, there's a point where he slits Bruce Banner's throat to bring out with the intent of bringing out the Hulk to fight him. Ultimately, he is equated to that of the base level Hulk. The calmest version of Hulk is the strength of Sasquatch. So honestly, as far as that ends up working out, I would argue that he is the lowest echelon of nuclear. He is quite formidable. He is somebody you do not want to end up going blow to blow with. But as far as overall strength, he very much seems like he's middle of the road as far as the total scale goes, which kind of lands him in nuclear. I think there's arguments to be made for Super Soldier for sure. And once again, power level does not equate to influence in the Marvel Universe. So that's something very important to consider. And as far as according to Scopely, I want to make a freaking blanket announcement right now. All of the blog posts should be like this, right? None of this is made up. not that they make things up. It's like because they don't. That's the difference between. I went on a rant about lore earlier. That's the difference between it being lore and being a mistake. In some of the other blog posts, they get things wrong, but they try to write the correct thing. It's adjacent but incorrect, right? All of this is correct. All of this is descriptive. It's a little bit longer than some of the other ones, but this gives you a really good idea of who the character is. They did it, right? This isn't the first they did it. They get it right sometimes. This is a good description. This tells you who he is. It gives you a good idea of like who he is as a person, as a character, and what he does, right? Please, this is what we want to see. This is what I want to see at least in the blog post. This is somebody did their research and wrote out a nice little paragraph that lets you know who he is. And it makes me happy to see a good blog post description. Absolutely. So, that is Frosty Features Sasquatch. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Please let me know your favorite Sasquatch moments in the comments, or if I got anything wrong, I'd love to hear it. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. And as a reminder, every Sunday at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, you can sit on our Frosty Feature stream at the link above, where we do Frosty Features live. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope that you all have a fantastic, fantastic weekend. Most importantly, stay cool.